Yes, we're going to make, now you'll laugh at this because this is typical of my day. I had everything ready here to show you, and I just put this daisy down on the table and a petal broke. Yeah, I'd probably just about get away with that if it was on a wedding cake or something. But anyway, so this is what we are making this evening. I say we, I am making, I'm showing you how to make these this evening. Little sugar daisies. So without further ado, let's get on. I need to put my glasses on, otherwise I can't see what I'm doing, and they're filthy, so I really can't see what I'm doing. So with sugar flowers, the first thing to know, which I didn't know when I first started attempting to make sugar flowers, is that you need the right sugar paste. You can't use just the fondant sugar paste from Tesco, the stuff that you cover cakes with, because it won't go brittle. What you need, you can use that if you put something called Tylo powder in. There's my Tylo powder. But it's generally better just to get the proper stuff. And I use this stuff, Squire's Sugar Florist paste. It's about £4 for a packet that size, and it does quite a lot. It goes quite a long way. So sugar paste, get the right sugar paste. You can also get, there's all sorts of different ones. There's the flour paste. You know, the people that do the sugar paste do the flour paste. Smartflex do a flour paste. Renshaw's do a flour paste. So there's lots of different types out there, but make sure you've got one of those, because if you just use the normal cake covering paste, it's all going to go floopy and things will drop off. We don't want that, do we? So that's the first thing that you must know. These are all things, by the way, that I wish I'd known when I first started doing sugar flowers. It would have saved an awful lot of time if I'd known these. So we're doing daisies this evening. Now I've got loads and loads of daisy cutters here. I'll just lower this down a bit. I've got hundreds and hundreds of cutters. I just keep buying them. These ones, I'm going to be using the smallest one of these. These are actually Gerbera. Is it Gerbera or Gerbera? And these come in a set of 3. I think, yeah, these ones are PME. I've got 3 PME, but they come in 3 sizes, so you can do big ones. You can also get these ones, and you can actually get teeny weeny ones if you want to do really, tiny daisy size. You can get the little ones, and these are plunger cutters, which are quite useful. So they push the paste out. But I'm going to do this one today, mainly because it's big enough for you to see what I'm doing. If I tried to do the tiny one, you wouldn't see what I'm doing. So it's this one, which is more sort of the margarita. Is that it? Those big white daisies, the ones that come in the pots in the garden centre. I love those. I try to get one every year, and it generally dies on me. But there we go. So that's what we're doing this evening. But I shall stick that in my cake dummy so that no more petals fall off. So we're going to be using this. Now, what we do first of all when we're making a sugar flower, a sugar daisy, is we make the centre. In fact, let's get that back so you can see. So you can see you've got a yellow centre, and we make that first. Okay. If you've just got white sugar paste, you can just use white, and then you can dust it afterwards. You can dust it yellow. You can also create the little sort of textured effect. You can use, once it's the wire's on, I'll show you how to do that in a second. You can put little sort of marks on it with a cocktail stick to make those sort of little indents. Or you can use semolina coloured with dust to make it a sort of yellowy colour, and you can sort of dip it in that, and it'll make that sort of textured effect. So there's lots of things you can do with the middle bit, the eye bit. Yeah. But what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to hot wire these because it's great fun. And hot wiring, as you can see underneath, what it does is it burns the sugar and it creates a glue, which really, I mean, that is really stuck fast, that wire. That's not going anywhere. So if I've got fairly biggish bits of sugar paste that I need to attach to wire, if they're the right shape, I will hot wire because they really stick fast. So I shall show you how to do that. Right, I'm going to bring this down so you can see what I'm doing. You get a lovely, lovely view of my chest, but I've got my sugar bloom box apron on, so shameless plugging here. So I've got my paste. This is far too much. I don't need that much. Let's just use that. Now with the paste, what you need to do is you need to make sure it's nice and warm, like you do with you know, covering a cake. You need to knead it a little bit, and that way, once it's warmed up, it's almost the same kind of idea as you know, gluten in bread. If you sort of mix it and knead it enough, it then becomes stretchy, so you see your paste stretches. Okay, that's the kind of that's the kind of texture you want on your paste. And I love the noise. I love that noise. I don't know why. I'm a bit strange, aren't I? So that's for the actual petals, but for the centre, now unfortunately I ran out of yellow, so I found some sort of orangey just to show you this evening. Okay, so make sure it's nice and warmed up. Now for the centre, what we need is we need a sort of large pea-shaped, large pea-sized, so probably about that much. And you need to, oh, no, that's probably a bit too big actually. Because what you've got to do is you've got to get it the size in the middle there, basically. That's the size that you want. Whatever cutter you're using, aim for that size. Ooh. My paste is running away with me today. So probably about that size. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flatten it so it becomes a sort of a disc. Yeah, so it's nice and flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that on there. Put the other paste away. Now with florist paste particularly, it's really important to not let the air get to it because it dries out really quickly. So whenever you're not using spare, keep it covered up in cling film or in a little airtight tub or something like that. Right, so this is the fun bit. What we're going to do, I'm actually going to use a candle. You can just light it with your lighter like that, but I like to use a candle because it's more fun. There we go. So I've got my candle here. Now, what we need to do with the wire, now the wire, this is really thick wire because it's going to be holding a moderate bit of weight. So this is a 20 gauge wire. The lower the number on wire, the lower the number, the thicker the wire. So 20 gauge is really quite thick. Okay, as opposed to, where is it? I've got it on my trolley here somewhere. I can't find it. A 30, which is really, really thin. Oh, I can't find it. Take my word for it. A 30, which is thin, but the 20 is a good solid wire. So if you've got a fairly heavy bit of paste, it won't floop over. Okay. So what we want to do with this is we want to create a little circle. So you get a paintbrush or a something round, pencil, something like that. And you're going to wind the wire. Now with the 20 gauge wire, it's fairly stiff, so you have to be quite assertive with it. So you're going to wind it round. Okay, and then you're going to pull the wire down the middle, and then you're going to pull the wire up. So you end up with like a flat circle. You see how I did that? Like that. Okay. Now I'm just going to check that this end fits on my paste. Yes, it does. I'll hold that up so you can see it. Yeah, like that. And what I'm going to do now is heat this. This is the good bit. So you heat it. Don't worry about it going sort of brown and charred, because you cover that over with various bits and pieces and tape and things. But you see it's really heating up. Smells a little bit because the paper on the wire burns. Once it's really hot, have your paste ready, and do mind your fingers on this because it does get really, really hot. So we want to hold it, really, really heat it up, and oh, I love that. That is such fun. And can you see it's sort of melted into the sugar paste? It's melted the sugar and created a glue. Okay, so you can see that's really, and that is really solid there. What I would then do is just leave that to dry. Yeah, partly because that bit's going to be really hot. You don't want to do anything with that yet. So just leave that to dry. Luckily, I have one here that I did earlier in the yellow. In fact, I didn't do it earlier. I did it a couple of weeks ago. I had them ready. So that one you're going to leave to dry. And at this point, if you wanted to put sort of little textures on it, you do it while the paste was still fairly flexible, but do watch that because it is hot. Okay, so that's hot wiring. Get rid of that. Put that back in my trolley. Ooh. Get in there. All right. Ooh. Sorry, excuse me, I've got a runny nose today. Ooh. So that is the centre of our daisy. We have that ready. And then we come to the actual petals. So as I said before, I'm going to use this one today. And I'm going to use this little bit of paste. Now, if I'm ever doing lots and lots of little flowers, what I do is I'll cut out lots of petals or shapes, but I don't want them to dry out. So what I do is I get my faithful, highly technical, it's just a normal freezer bag that I've cut down the sides so that it flaps up. And then I'll put things that I've cut out in there, and then they won't dry out or dry out as quickly. They will eventually. If you left them there for a day or something, they would. But rather than just leaving them on the board, because they will dry out then. Just going to get some corn flour. I use a little bit of corn flour on the board to stop the paste from sticking. But don't use too much, because if you use too much, it just dries the paste out. And then everything just breaks and crumbles and you cry. Ask me how I know. There we are. Right. So when you're rolling out, you don't need one of these blue boards, by the way. You can just get something flat to roll it on. Similarly, you don't really need one of these, but these are only about £5. So if you're going to do a few sugar flowers, it's worth getting one of these. The boards, about a tenner, something like that. So again, if you think you're going to do a few of them, it's worth investing in that. So I'm not going to do these too thin. I don't want these too thin because they become very, very fragile when they're thin. But you can see how it sort of goes nice, and it's almost like material, isn't it? Like fabric. Okay, and when you're rolling it out, pick it up between each roll. Otherwise, you'll just roll it into the board and you won't be able to get it off. You have to sort of pick it off because you want it like this. You want it sort of fairly free of the board. You want it to be able to move around. Because what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut 2 of these out. This is absolutely mucky. And when you press down on the cutter, what you want to be able to do is move it around the board and really press down on the edges and pull it away. And then underneath, just rub your fingers over the edges so you don't get any fluffy edges. Some flowers work okay with little fluffy edges, but I don't think these ones do. I think you want fairly sharp edges for these. And because this is a plunger, it's like a veined plunger. So when I press down on this, I'm going to get some marks on the top. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to press it down on here on the board, which will give me an indent. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it down, and it should, ooh, there we go. It should just come out. Oh, it's a little bit fluffy. Never mind, I'll get rid of that. So there's one. And here comes the other one. So you don't need much. You could see that little bit of paste that I was warming up. That makes absolutely plenty. In fact, I could probably get a 3rd one in there if I was doing more than one. But it's generally, I wouldn't cover the board and do loads, even if I have got the plastic, because they do tend to dry out fairly quickly. And then you can't shape them and roll the petals very well if you do that. So just check. If you want to be really thorough, you can just sort of go through the edges and things like that. So press it down, get the markings on it, and press it out. Oh dear, that is a dreadful one. I think this is one of the cheaper ones. If you buy the cheaper ones, you'll find that the edges aren't so sharp and you do get the sort of fluffy. I have got PME ones. The PME ones are generally better because you do get the lovely sharp edges. So with the cutters, generally you get what you pay for. That is very, very fluffy. Never mind. Well managed. Right, the next thing you need is a rollerball tool. If you subscribe to the Sugar Bloom box, you get one of these as like a joining up gift, and you get a round one of these pads, and you also get another pokey tool. Rollerball tools are really useful. I've got a set of metal ones, which are actually better because I do so many. And then what we do on the pad, the spongy pad, is we just roll. I need the other end. You roll inwards from the tip inwards, and you can see it sort of raises gives it a bit of movement. I'm always saying that on the Sugar Bloom box training. Gives it a bit of movement, because you don't just want a flat flower. You want it doing something. So we do that. So we've got the 2 shaped petals. Then what we need is a little bit of glue. I've just got like the Hobbycraft, edible glue. You can use water, but I tend to stick to the glue because it just works a little bit more quickly. With sugar, with water, you just have to wait for it to become tacky a little bit more. Now we're going to put one on top of the other, but we're going to make sure that the petals are sort of peeping through the gaps, if you like. You see that? So the petals are peeping through. And you can see as I press it down, the petals sort of sit up a little bit. There we go. And then we just want another little bit of glue on the top. There we go. And you take your center, you poke it into the middle. Now this is where a pad like this one comes in handy with the holes, because what I shall do is just poke it through the hole. You don't have to have one of these, but it's handy if you do. And then you just press the center up, which is why it's handy that this middle bit is hard when you do this bit, because pressing down on it just makes life a little bit easier. And you can't do that if it's still a little bit soggy. There we go. And then what you can do, if you want to, is arrange the petals a little bit before they start drying. They've started sort of going a little bit hard already, actually. You can get away with just one layer of petals, actually, but I quite like the two layers. And then what I tend to do with these ones, because you can see gravity takes over and it's starting to droop. What you really want is you want the petals to, you know, to be upright a little bit. So what I do is I get a bit of silver foil, poke it through, and then I let the silver foil, I sort of shape the foil so that the petals have something to sit on. So that's a fairly closed one. But then the trick with this, a peg underneath will hold that foil up. And then the foil will hold those petals so that they dry in that shape, in that space. Yeah. And while it's still drying, you can sort of arrange, poke. If you've got one of, no, wrong one. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. No, it's not that one. It's this one. No, I've lost my poker tool. There it is. Should have put it out to start with. One of these, which again you get in the starter kit with the sugar balloon box if you subscribe to that. You can use that to then sort of adjust and move things around before it sets hard, because once it sets hard, that's it. That's where it's going to be. I don't really want those that curled in. Here we go. So that is the sugar daisy. That's how we do it. So I would leave that. It would probably be okay to take the peg and the foil off probably after an hour. But I would, if you can leave it longer, like leave it overnight, it's even better. Then it's solid. But with these ones, do be really careful because they are quite fragile. So sometimes I just leave the foil on until I need the flower for something. Then I know it's going to be safer and it won't break. I'm just going to leave that there and get this little chap back. Because what you would then do once it's all dry, you want to tape the stem. And taping, you use the Florist Tape. You can get them in different shades of green. You can get brown, you can get white, and in fact now you can get blues and all sorts of different colours. I tend to go for the thinner one. I do use the thicker ones, but I use those for sort of long, thin leaves. When I did the daffodil balloon box, I used these for some of the long leaves. But this is the stuff that you need for your stems. And the key to this, again, this is something I wish I'd known when I first started, because I was you know, I was told that, oh, you need some florist tape to wind round your stems. But as hard as I tried, I couldn't get it to stick. And it wasn't until someone said, oh, you need to stretch it. When you stretch it, that releases the glue. And then what you can do is you just twiddle it round. You can see it's sort of attached. And then twiddle the stem and it'll just wind round and down. Like that, and just pull the end off. So that's how we deal with the florist paste. And then what I would probably do then, for this one, I'd probably colour the yellow a little bit. And some daisies, they have that sort of pinky purple bit, don't they? Around there and underneath. So it might be that I would dust purple and pink into there. And perhaps a little bit of pink on the edges, because some little daisies have that, don't they? So you can play around with your dust and get it coloured. Look at that sad little gap there. So that is sugar daisies, a few basics there of sugar flowers. If you are wanting to learn a little bit more about sugar flowers, I've been shamelessly plugging my sugar bloom box, which is it's actually a monthly subscription box. And what I send my subscribers a box, and it's got paste, it's got a cutter, it's got the wires, it's got everything that you need to make that particular bloom for that month. So last month it was sweet peas. So in the box was a whole packet of sugar paste, sweet pea cutters, wires, tape, and dusts to dust the flour. And then I do a tutorial about an hour's long, showing you step by step how to actually create them. And those are recorded, and you can watch them back whenever it is you want to, to make your flower or make it again or whatever. So that's the sugar bloom box. There are also sort of standalone boxes you can buy. So if you wanted to make, what have I done so far? I've done poppies, poinsettias for Christmas, orchids, freesia, rose, daffodils. Oh, and now sweet peas. So all of those, if you wanted to just make one of those, you can buy a box and I'll send you the materials and the training to just create that flower. And it's also quite a nice gift as well. People have bought them for gifts for people. Because what I do is I put a QR code in the box, which links directly to the training video, which I thought was quite a genius move on my part. My daughter said, my gosh, that's really clever. I said, yeah, I was quite pleased with that move. So that's the sugar bloom box. If you'd like to look a little bit more about what it's all about, that's what it is, the sugarbloombox.co.uk. There's a whole website there with various different pages. So you've got your subscription page, past boxes that you can buy, gift boxes you can buy. Gift boxes, I'll put a little message in, a little card with a message in. So if you're buying it as a gift for someone. And the other good thing about this, if you are buying it as your business, training for your business, you can put it down as a business expense, which is quite good, really, because it, it's tax deductible, as they say. So it's a legitimate business expense if you've got a home baking business. So that's rather good. So there we are. So that is sugar daisies, a little bit of sugar basics. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been useful. And if you do make some, do show me, do pop them in the group to show us what you've been up to, because I do like to see what people are making, because I'm quite nosy, really. At the end of next month, I'll do another flower of some sort. I don't know what yet. It needs to be something moderately quick. I can't do anything too complicated because we've only really got half an hour. But I'll find something quick to show you. Next week's Wednesday waffle, I think I've got down that I'm going to talk a little bit about finances, HMRC, sort of tax basics, that kind of thing, because I know people do get worried about that and a bit confused about that. So I'll do another session on the basics of that now that we've started a new tax year, and I'll talk to you all about that as well, what that is, a tax year. So that's next Wednesday. So there we go, and I'll give you a bathroom update as well. Tell you what's going on with the bathroom. So in the meantime, have a lovely week, have a lovely weekend. Whatever baking you're doing, enjoy it. That's the main thing. And I will see you next Wednesday. Toodaloo, everybody. Bye.